So this is a little bit of my garden tour, and realize that as I go around my garden, you have to start at the very beginning, and that's with the soil. And so the first what I will show you first is my worm bin. And you might even see a little bit of motion as the worms all duck in. But yes, we do a little bit of composting on our campus here at Temple Beth Shalom. And as we create our garden, one of the things you have to have is germinated seeds. And so these are the next generation of seeds that we'll be planting. This is some okra, this is some peppers and some different mint, as well as a few fruit trees. And this is actually a peanut plant. You can even see a peanut shell down in there. And that is from the local squirrels who have been digging in my plants. And then this is actually some ginger that is from a cooking project. There was ginger left over. It started growing roots and we planted it, and we'll have ginger from our own garden. This is our Garden of Eden. It doesn't really look like a Garden of Eden right now because it's getting ready to be planted over the next few weeks. We do have a few things planted like black-eyed peas. We have an olive tree at the center. This was envisioned as quite literally the Garden of Eden with a tree at the center and then the 4 rivers that spread out in all directions. And this is actually an etrog tree that is from seeds that we harvested from our etrog at the end of Sukkot. This is a prime example of how in one pot you can do a lot. These bags are easy to find on the internet, and these are just some cuttings of mint that took root. There's some stevia and some different kinds of mint. And then I have a few other bags that we're getting ready to be planted as the weather is getting milder. And you can see this is just adjacent to our playground. And then here is both my pride and joy and my source of sadness. When I did a presentation about 8 months ago, this was our bean, potato, and pumpkin sukkah. You can see the sukkah structure is down. The bamboo that it was rotted away, and we are trying to reset it with PVC. But the goal is to have things like sweet potatoes growing up. Here is some grapes that I actually got germinated from seeds that were wild grapes in my own yard, or some butterfly pea flowers that we are able to harvest. And so eventually this will have some more, hopefully, potatoes and pumpkins and beans growing on it to help us cover this structure. This is our 5 Census garden. It originally started as a spiral. It's been expanded out, and it has some butterfly peas, which I need to pick the seed pods to plant them for the next generation. But it also has some lemongrass. It has some turmeric growing in it. It has, I'm going to walk around, this is a walking path that we have as part of a meditation experience. And there is some aloe that was planted originally about 10 years ago. We have some rosemary and a few different herbs that are here in this garden. And the goal of this garden, again, is spirituality and the 5 senses. You can even see a pineapple that's over there. That this garden, as it continues to be planted, will have all kinds of different herbs, different plants, edible flowers, potentially, well, there are beans. We have the butterfly pea flowers. And with the goal being of how do we use a garden to spark all 5 of our senses. And you can see we have a little picnic area and this loop of the walkway that goes around. This is one of our pollinator gardens, and you can see that the Aster is actually blooming, and you might in the video pick up some of the bees that are flying around. Underneath all of this is the 5 petals of a flower. You'll see some pictures in the presentation. This is a big cassia plant, and I have been I'm going to continue to kind of walk around this pollinator garden. See the backside of this. There is some spotted horse mint that is finishing blooming, and there is some of the original walkway. I was in here to weed a couple of weeks ago, and this is both the blessing and the curse of a pollinator garden. Many of these are weeds that will spread out and take over. This is some wild coffee right here. It was actually part of the walkway on the other side. And so this is a garden that does need us to come in and clean it out at different points in time. There are lots of different volunteers, but the beauty of this garden, when you're here and the sun starts to rise, it is absolutely positively amazing to see all of the pollinators come out. Bees and butterflies and all kinds of pollinators. It is truly a beautiful space, and it's interesting to see what takes in the space and what doesn't. And this is actually, here is a cotton plant that I planted a few weeks ago. A few months ago. This cotton plant will hopefully yield not only beautiful flowers, but yield cotton, which we then use on the bima as part of the wick for our olive oil lamps. This is one of our olive trees. We have about four or five olive trees on campus. You saw one in our Garden of Eden, but here's another one just on the grounds. It is growing. We haven't produced olives yet. It would be a hope and dream. And there's actually a number of faith communities that have olive trees on their campus. We do have an olive press, and one day we would hope that we would have enough olives growing from the trees here that we would be able to run a press and have a little bit of oil. The miracle of the oil hasn't happened yet, but it's still pretty amazing to have these olive trees. This is actually a bottle brush tree, but there have been times where we haven't been able to get some of the materials for etrog and lulav and be able to use the leaves of this bottle brush to replace some of the other types of leaves that we have in the lulav.